if I told you that the Brujah that you know and love, the one that's actually like a mainline clan, what if I told you it was all a lie? And they're actually the fake Brujah, which is implied because our subject today is called the true Brujah, another bloodline that goes clearly off of the clan Brujah, but also is another clan similar to the Nagaraja that has to do with the Talmay Ra. Just not as like integral, I guess. But the true Brujah, also, I'm not joking about this, also known as the Truha. I'm not calling them that. Even though I think that name is really funny, I'm not gonna use it. But the main story here, the reason there's a split in the first place, those of you familiar with your Brujah lore, you'll know that the actual progenitor of the clan, the antediluvian Brujah, that was his name? Maybe. Also, he's known as Troil the Elder, and also known as Lise, the man victim to the crime of having a capital I immediately followed by a lowercase l. One of Brujah's main childer, Troil, the younger, obviously, actually diablerized Brujah, and because of that, Troil became the de facto antediluvian and leader of the clan. But that does leave other childer of Brujah. There's a central question. Did Brujah have other childer? Some claim he did, and that's where the true Brujah come from. It is the bloodline that actually comes from the real antediluvian. Though I will mention, I think it's important before we get into everything, there is a timeline in the Gehenna book, which the Gehenna stuff and the end of days timelines for WoD. Clearly, as WoD is not full apocalypsed in our current day-to-day, this isn't fully canon unless you want it to be. Personally, I'm under the opinion you should treat the Gehenna stuff as canon if you want it, but all in all, it might be building off of things, but there's so many different scenarios which play off so many different lore bits. All the Gehenna stuff cannot exist at the exact same time. Which timeline and end events are you picking matters the most. There's one of those timelines that reveals Brujah is actually still alive, dumbly, and that Brujah only had one childer, so the true Brujah are just making shit up. I am not going to agree this is canon, because otherwise, most of this video doesn't work. If that timeline is true, essentially, just tack on to this video that the true Brujah are just wrong about basically everything about their history, instead casting them to the pits that they are Brujah, but just really coping about it. But the true Brujah way back in the day, roughly after the diablerization, clearly didn't like the rest of the clan. This diablerization kind of cemented the fact that the Brujah are just bad parents and bad kids, just rebellious, angry sorts. The true Brujah aren't that. If you wanted to play a Brujah, but instead of an angry political one, you wanted to play a Brujah that's sad and goth, which I say purely because, like, I'm not joking. I only use official art for these videos. I don't want to steal fan art, obviously. I am not kidding you when I say half of the art for the true Brujah is just pale, sad women, which, you know what? That's a vibe if you want to do that. I think it's important right here, before going into the rest of their history, to really cement what makes them different. The big core one is like personality, because the true Brujah, while their cousins, their siblings basically, are angry, rebellious, hates the word authority. You tell them what to do, you're getting punched in the face. That's a stereotype for Brujah. The true Brujah instead are detached, they are emotionally distant, and they find it really difficult to deal with their emotions at all. Largely because they spent a lot of time throughout their history working to suppress that rage the Brujah feels. Originally, way back in the day, it seems like they had the original Brujah bane, that Brujah bane that makes their tempers flare and harder to control themselves, but through doing this, it seems like the true Brujah really suppressed all of their emotions, which I actually like how this bane developed. I think it's an interesting concept, because I don't like the idea that as a vampire, you can just wiggle your way out of the consequences of your existence. So yeah, sure, you can get past the rage part of your blood, but you're taking everything else with it. This is actually like their mechanical bane. I don't have a V5 version because they have not been mentioned in V5 at all. I don't know if they're canon in V5, basically. Their bane is working off of older humanity rules with conscience and convictions. Vampire hasn't altered the humanity like a crazy amount. We still got dots. The difference is V5 has a bit more gamified elements for the actual humanity levels. True Brujah bane makes it so all rolls you make with like conscience and conviction any kind of morality check you're making is +2 more difficult, and as well, buying any humanity stuff is just double the price of XP. This is a mechanical expression of just the fact that it is harder for a true Brujah to hold on to their humanity. Now, I will admit my actual mechanical knowledge of V5 is extent to, like, I've done one campaign, read a bunch of the books, and I've been in a couple one-shots. I'm in no way a guy that should run V5 at this point. I think it could take some doing to actually port the true Brujah into 5th edition Vampire. Even worse because of their disciplines. Normal Brujah get presence, potence, and celerity. Instead, the true Brujah call on one of the unique disciplines of Brujah himself, this being Temporus. Temporus is time manipulation, which is also where I get it mentioned. The dumb part of Brujah in the Gehenna timeline. Because you want to know the reason we know in that specific timeline that Troy was the only child there? Well, it's actually because right before they died from being diablerized, Brujah actually time traveled to the future. And in the future, he decided to work with Lilith. And that's what revealed that everything was a lie. Which also means Troy didn't diablerize fully, because you have to fully imbibe the soul, so this is stupid again. How is that a reveal? Because I feel like, quite honestly, it should be a little evident that you diablerized a person. The idea that Troy fucked it up, failed, and was just like, I guess I'm not gonna say anything. Everyone thinks I did it. If I was a vampire who just diablerized my very powerful sire, I would be worried that it failed because they could come back and kill me. That's my fear. But anyways, Temporus, if you're actually looking at it mechanically, Temporus is kind of fun, but what it is it's like a slightly different celerity. You got some fun time powers, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is just, you are taking some similar actions as celerity, speeding up and being fast, just altering time. You don't get like a full Zowildo time stop. You actually get some like smaller scale time rewinding where you rewind time to a check you failed and you succeed because you know what's gonna happen. It's like the most powerful one you can get. But some of the effects are fun. I do really like the one where you just make somebody like repeat a singular action in a weird little time loop. That's perfect like stealth build. And I mean, these are the reasons why I think it's a little tough to bring them into V5. I will happily pin a comment if anyone who's like super familiar with running that edition has a proposal for how to homebrew this in. Quite honestly, this is one of the first times I've encountered something with Vampire that I can't say you can easily port into another edition. The only way I could propose it with my, again, limited knowledge of the edition is that you just port over Temporus. Temporus works the way it does in 20th, and find a way to make the gamified elements of V5's humanity a little harder for them to do. All I can think of. Maybe the Blush of Life is a little worse. It is actually a theory that one of the things impacting the true Brujah's emotional state is that real strong connection to Temporus, because that really strong separation that they feel like they're separate and isolated and just not part of vampire politics, the vampire community. They don't feel like they're with all of their brethren. Temporus is an interesting way to play off of that, because like they're in some way feeling the flow of time as an immortal creature. There is some degree where that isolates you. So the real defining moment when it comes to the true Brujah's history is that of Carthage. Carthage is a very pivotal point for actual Brujah lore. Carthage was the attempt of this clan to really try to hit the heyday of the first and second city, create their perfect city, their perfect environment, a place where the kindred can come and fully thrive. This wouldn't last for a decent amount of reasons. Some a little contradictory and depends who you trust. On some accounts, the Ventru and all their groups that made up the early Camarilla, they came because they hated Carthage. They were all Roman and they hated the idea of Carthage because they should be the main power. Others say, largely Ventru kind of claim this, is that Carthage was actually a super dangerous haven for a blood cult. And to be honest, I think it's probably a healthy mix of both. I would imagine that they wanted to fuck over Carthage, and then a possible blood cult made that likely. I say this because turns out Troil was actually a lover of Malak, one of the main Bali. The true Brujah were on the side of seeing this city get slowly corrupted, because it was genuinely starting to get corrupted. It was being warped from the central idea they wanted of real haven for the people and the vampire. Because even as a vampire, you need to live in harmony with the humans. That harmony was being fucked up. I would argue because of the blood cult. Trolley and Moloch were in a nice old romantic relationship. They fought and most likely died. Troil most likely like used one of the disciplines to sink into the ground and die with Moloch, and there's no trace of them left. True Brujah blame the actual clan Brujah for all of this. I want to mention this fun fact before I fully move on. I don't know if I mentioned this in my other Brujah video, but Troil, the reason I'm being so ambiguous about their gender is the fact that the actual lore is, because their gender depends on what edition you're talking about. Like some older books assume that Troil is a man, others still older, I think it's one of the Dark Ages books, says that Troil was a woman, and then the revised edition clan book for Brujah says that Troil didn't like the idea of consigning themselves to one. But the true Brujah blamed the normal clan Brujah for all of this. And you know what? It is hard to blame them. In Carthage, what they did, the true Brujah, they focused on philosophy, on education. They believe that instead of physical might, it should be intellectual might. You should be really intelligent. If you're gonna have all this on life, you should utilize it to better your mind. This is on top of the fact that they were very isolationist, very separate, and felt distant from everyone else emotionally. So if you're trying to find a line of work, hiding out in a library or like essentially a wizard tower, whatever you want. It's also because of that view that as time went on, the true Brujah remained a really tiny number, like small. After Carthage and like around in the Dark Ages, there were 10 true Brujah in existence scattered throughout Europe, and it is around here that the Talme Ra, the true Black Hand, makes me wonder if they picked the true Brujah just because they also had true in the name. It was around then that they approached the true Brujah and said, hey, why don't you join us? We'll help you get revenge. The true Brujah said, hell yeah, I hate those guys. And as time went on, being a true Brujah, you still didn't like really embrace a lot of people. If they do embrace, it's someone who's very, very smart, especially as the world started building the idea of just higher education and universities started popping up. That really appealed to them, gave them a bit more, recruits. They still didn't do it a lot, but they were working with the Talme Ra. And the way they did this, I feel like this is just Dragon Ball Z abridged Vegeta counting the androids, because the true Brujah, to work on their evil schemes, actually infiltrated the Brujah ranks in the Camarilla and the Anarchs and the Sabbat. Am I counting? Like, this is the 5th, maybe 6th faction that does this.
Do I hear 5?
Are there any other hidden conspiracies I don't know about? I'm exaggerating maybe just a tiny bit, because some of this isn't just, we're on our secret plans. There's actually a decent number of like current modern day true Brujah who aren't in the Talme Ra, which I have to say from the perspective that there's nothing about them in V5, so we haven't seen the destruction of the Talme Ra yet. So when I say like several or many, I probably mean like, I don't know, 12. There's 12 of them that aren't. But it's less of them actively lying and infiltrating and more like when someone says, what clan are you? And they say Brujah, it's technically not a lie. It is just way rarer for a true Brujah member to actually state out loud that is what they are. Even more so because it is actually really rare for one of this bloodline to be inside a vampire society. There's a term for this, it's called autarchus, which basically means you do not recognize vampire government, any princes, any leaders, you don't respect any organization of kindred. And most often they're living in places where there isn't really a vampire presence and just doing their thing of getting smarter, more intelligent, just not wanting to deal with anybody. Though they do actually stay in touch with the other true Brujah members because like it's nice to at least have a pen pal. It's mentioned that they either do this through like literally letters or some of them are on the internet. When TrekNet was a thing, rest in peace. The true Brujah, in my opinion, are the thing in WoD that happens pretty often, which is I like the concept. I think the concept is really fun. I think it is a very cool way to offshoot off of the Brujah because you wrote that in, you have a method of doing it. I think the vibe and the actual emotional vibe of the true Brujah is really cool. I definitely don't see myself at all through it as a person who frankly gets exhausted by a lot of social interactions, especially big social gatherings, or at the very least I'm hanging out with a very small group of people at a time, a small social group that I care a lot about. And I mean, I took the official Vampire the Masquerade clan quiz. It gives me Brujah, and if I was a Brujah, which I honestly, I think it's a fair one to put me in, I also would probably become an autarchus because I don't care. I just would use my unlife to hang out, watch good movies, play good games. I would just vibe in immortality at night. Though maybe you've noticed, maybe you felt this throughout this video, the lore feels like it's jumping around a bit and is really vague. Like their connection to the Tal Ra, there's not a big event or story of what brings them in. It is just they were promised revenge and took it. And like, there's just isn't a lot of detail, so it makes them feel like a bit of an afterthought, which is fair. It's a variant bloodline. It's not one of the main clans. They're not gonna have any big major characters really. They're an alternate option for you to play that fits a better vibe. It's just, if you're going to line them up with the Nagaraja, I think the Nagaraja are a bit more fleshed out. Get it? But I think the true Brujah just need a little bit more to tie them in. There is another bit I will actually mention with the Tal Ra because I really like how they view it. One bit about them I think lands really well is sometimes it is difficult to write a group, a faction, a character that you say is smart and then see them as intelligent. There's a lot of times with the true Brujah lore that we do get, I think, damn, that's fair. Or like, I understand how you got to that point. The key one is their actual view on like the death cult idea of the Tal Ra, which you should watch my Nagaraja video for some more information, but a really likely idea for the Tal Ra is that their big thing watching over Enoch is that they want to bring back the antediluvians and bring around Gehenna. They are a doomsday cult. The true Brujah believe in all of this. However, they have it set that they're really planning on backstabbing everyone right at the end. Because here's the way they view it. All the other vampires, all the other bloodlines and clans, absolute fuckers. Pieces of shit they wouldn't shed a single tear over dying. And in their view, kinda deserve it. Agreed. Their idea is that if the antediluvians wake up and they're met with a bunch of chill-ass vibers instead of crazy zealots of we will follow you, we're your armies. They believe that probably mellow out the antediluvians when they wake up just a little bit, and they can maybe have a couple casualties because the antediluvians are gonna wake up hungry, but really avoid like the insane, crazy Gehenna bloodbath that would be the antediluvians rising up and taking over the vampire world. They figure that Earth would probably be better off with way less kindred on it. And again, I can't blame them. Does their plan involve the death of basically every other vampire, including your player character? Yes, of course. But I think that's way more interesting than like, yes, I will rule on top of it. And like being the conniving villain over honestly finding a pretty pragmatic reason that is through, God, we've been fucked over so many times with these other bloodlines. And if you want proof of what they're saying, look outside and open up a history book and count how many times the true Brujah have fucked up. The answer is a big fat goose egg. It's 0. So there's bits of it I can appreciate. And I think there's some parts where I think the idea of them is very fun. It is not a bloodline I'd personally jump to play, which isn't even a knock at them. It's just purely, this is not my character style. I might relate a bit to the true Brujah in real life, but for the actual characters I enjoy playing at my tables, not my vibe. Character personality wise, I lead a little bit more Ravnos. But yeah, that's about it. First and foremost, I want to thank all my channel members who make all these videos possible. I'm greatly appreciative. And I want to give a huge shout out to my top tier channel members, that being Eric Sheriff, Megs Cadron, Pork Chomp, The Funeral King, and Czar Shadow. Thank you all so much, it means a lot. But yeah, quite honestly, I'll say expect a mage video coming up next. Like I said at the end of that one, I do want to put out a big compilation. I understand the people out there that just like one big long video that they can put on while they do some other shit. I am so comfortable in the fact that I am second monitor content because that's what I watch. I need something so I can play Path of Exile 2, which is great. But anyways, that's about it. Like, comment, subscribe. See ya.